Some examples of hitting that natural frequency or resonant frequency. Now, I haven't actually found confirmation of these, but these are stories told to me, so I'm going to keep. One of them I believe is true, and the other one I think is kind of true. Now, I was told that there was a car that was designed years ago with a certain natural frequency. If you jump on the bumper of your car, if you have a bumper, if you jump on your car and you jump off, the car's going to vibrate at a certain amount. Now, when you're doing construction, for instance, if you're building a bridge, that the distance between the spans, because if you go over it, you hear that doo-doo, 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 because there are basically gaps in the bridge to allow for expansion during heat, expansion during the summer and contraction during winter. So you've got a little bit of a give there. So you keep hitting those bumps, and there's regulations about how far apart those are. So imagine that you hit one of those bumps and your car is bouncing up and down, and then you hit the second one. So, for instance, as I take this slinky right here and I expand it, this thing is going up and down at a certain rate. And it's going to keep doing that. It's going to lose a little bit of energy as we go, but basically the rate at which it goes up and down is the time it takes to go up and down is it's very close to constant. So if I take this and I get this thing going up and down, and then with my top hand I start moving that up and down, notice that this thing starts getting wilder and wilder. My top hand doesn't have to move very much for that thing to start oscillating more and more. So supposedly this car was designed with a natural frequency, a resonant frequency, that if you're driving at the speed limit, you hit that first bump, and then as you sort of move up and down, and you hit that second bump at just the right point where it starts getting wilder and wilder, and supposedly the car fell apart by the time it got to the end of the bridge. And the other story, that first one, that's the one that I can believe it's somewhat true, because we had a car when I was growing up. We'd go over to visit my grandparents. We'd cross the James River in Richmond, and the car did seem to be vibrating. It seemed to hit those things at just the right time. It didn't vibrate wildly by the time it got across the other one, but it was vibrating a little bit more by the time it got across the bridge, or going up and down a little bit more by the time it got across the bridge than when we started. The other case was sold by an engineering professor, so this is the one I tend to believe is true, is that there was a store in Durham, North Carolina, where people would go and they'd visit, and they probably wouldn't go, and for the most part they did not go back. And so they eventually brought in engineers to figure out what the problem was. Well, it turns out that the floor has a certain natural frequency. You step on the floor vibrates, and for the most part you don't notice it. However, the natural frequency of the floor and the natural frequency of the average human stomach was about the same. And so every time that you stepped on the floor, you get this vibration, and that vibration would hit basically it goes through your body, and your stomach would vibrate just a little bit, as naturally happens. But because the floor was oscillating up and down basically at the same rate as the stomach was oscillating, even though it was very imperceptible, the stomach was oscillating a little bit more and more. Now, it wasn't enough so you'd suddenly feel your stomach, not like the slinky where it's going up and down like this, but it's just enough for people to feel a little bit sick. And so the way that they solved it was they went in and they dampened the floor. They changed the resonant frequency of the floor so it was farther away from the average human stomach, and people stopped feeling sick again. Those are just two quick examples, just passing on the stories.